All right, so it is not every speaker who brings the Muslim clerisy to its knees with her cleavage. And that didn't happen with Jen either, but it was still pretty cool. Jen is a genetics graduate student at University of Washington. She's also on the board of directors of the Secular Student Alliance, like Joe Foley is. And she has any number of edgy things that she has done over the years, from all sorts of crazy things involving pirates. Still don't get it, guys. And boobquake and talking about feminism. But I won't get into that. Anyhow, I am now going to hand things over to Jen. Please give her a round of applause.
Well, thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me all right? Yeah? Okay. All right, so this talk sort of ties into what Jesse was talking about earlier, and Jesse was telling you how to contact the media and sort of get them to pay attention. And this will sort of be tying in on how to make sure people are paying attention, but that you're not just needlessly offending everyone too. Because there's a fine line we walk in doing something really creative and out there and crazy and just pissing off a lot of people, basically. So I'm going to be trying to give some pointers on walking the fine line between being edgy yet friendly so your group can succeed. So why be friendly? Well, basically because you don't want to see this at your college campus. I was the president and founder of my club at Purdue University in Indiana, and after being there for 3 years, it's a very conservative religious area, and even the school itself, while it's a huge campus, is very conservative and religious. And there can potentially be a lot of animosity in the community, and you really don't want to create a lot of enemies. Obviously, sometimes you're going to have enemies no matter what, but when you're dealing with that sort of situation, it's good to have at least some allies on your side. So sometimes it's good to have these sort of ideas in mind on tips for running events that won't have an angry mob following you whenever you're tabling outside. So how are we defining edgy? I define edgy as daringly innovative. So the part of daring is that sometimes things are going to go wrong. When you dare to do something, you will mess up occasionally, and you will offend people, and you will maybe not do that event in the future or tweak it, and that's totally okay. Everyone, this is a learning experience for everyone. I'm a genetics student. I'm not an official group organizer or anything. So keep that in mind. But here are some tips that I've learned over the years on how to sort of run events that walk that fine line. So first, don't be paralyzed by kindness, because you will always offend someone. Just to illustrate this, yes, this is my one lolcat for the talk. It's a rule. This was a sign that's been going up across the country saying, "Don't believe in God, you're not alone." And people got really upset about these signs. All they're saying is that we exist, atheists exist, and if you're an atheist, that's cool, come talk to us. And I know one of these even went up in Indiana, and man, if you read the comments for those news articles, they were really angry. They were like, how dare those atheists try to convert all of us and like put this on our buses where our children can see it. So, yeah, I know, fluffy clouds, it's really offensive. So you're always going to have people that no matter what you do, you can say you love kittens and they'll be offended by it. So don't get so upset about when someone's offended that you don't say anything at all, because speaking out is really important. And just a personal example of this is an event we did back at Purdue called Hug an Atheist. It was on Valentine's Day, and we had an event coming up the next week on debunking myths about atheists. So this is sort of like an advertising for that. We'd give free hugs. We gave away little Hershey Kisses with the advertisement for the event. And most people loved it. They thought it was great, whether they were an atheist or not. I mean, most people at Purdue aren't. It's a very Christian campus. But I still got a really angry letter that was hand-given to me while I'm in the freezing cold, saying that he was really upset that we were tricking people into hugging atheists and that we should all accept Jesus. So, again, free hugs, you can't always win. So don't get worried about those people. But at the same time, don't offend for the sake of offending. You don't want to turn into the atheist Phelps, the atheist Westboro Church, Baptist Church. Offended people should be considered collateral damage. They're not your actual goal. It just may happen in the process. So you don't want to it might be very fulfilling to act like a jerk occasionally, but does it actually really get anything done in the long run? So keep that in mind. One of the major tips I give is to consider the alternatives. If you have an event idea, can you come up with something that's less offensive but accomplishes the same goal or has the same message? And just for example, here's an event called Smut for Smut, which is actually from a group in Texas, where you can turn in religious texts for pornography. And every year they do this, they get media attention. It's usually very negative media attention, and people get really upset about it. But when I heard this, I actually saw this posted on Friendly Atheist back when I just started my club. And I'm like, well, secretly I think that's really funny. But, but I'm in the middle of Indiana. I mean, I don't know what would upset them more, handing out porn or like taking Bibles in. So I'm like, what can we do that's a similar idea of a trade? So we did fiction for fiction, which is still, you know, pretty edgy, and not everyone's super happy with it. But we have people trade in religious texts, and we give them fiction novels that we buy in bulk from the library book sales. So it's a really cheap event to run, and people get really excited about it. Even the people who are initially like, you're calling the Bible fiction, and they come up and talk to you, and then they're like, oh, you're actually explaining the idea to us, and it's not totally offensive, which I'll get to. But if we would have done Smut for Smut, yeah, that would have just been bad news. So if you can think of something that's a similar message, but not quite as bad, that's great. Another example, let's say you want to expose how Muslim extremists sometimes respond with violence. One option is everybody draw Muhammad Day. And if you can't read that caption, it's Self-Portrait Day was always one of young Muhammad's least favorite. Like that. I didn't make that. And something like that is so, like, it's like, how is that? I know some people are still offended by it, and everybody draw Muhammad Day still freaked a lot of people out. But when you consider the alternative of International Burn a Quran Day on September 11th, not as bad. It's just the magnitude between the two. So when you have different options of getting the same issue across, try to choose the one that's a little less offensive. Another big thing is to have a clear purpose. Make sure all of your participating members understand your goals. So not only should you have huge signs explaining what you're doing, what the event is, why you're doing it, not only should you put it on your website and have flyers and just make it as hard as possible to not understand what the event's about. But if you have a member working this table for a certain time, and someone goes up and talks to them, they're like, hey, why are you doing this fiction for fiction? And they say, oh, it's because religious people are stupid because they believe in something that's not real, instead of it's like, well, we want people to think critically about what they read, then you've totally ruined the message of the event, because not everyone, even in your own group, understood what the message was. So you need to make sure everyone's on the same page. And likewise, you want to emphasize, again, you want to emphasize your message, so it's hard to miss the point. If no one knows what your message is, it doesn't matter if you have one. For example, this is a sign from an atheist group, and it says, Jesus Christ had a homosexual relationship, and then their email. It doesn't say like what they're talking about, the context, what if they're trying to have a discussion about it, what the background is. It has absolutely no info. And they just put this sign up on campus basically to get a reaction out of people. And they got a reaction, but it was a very negative reaction. And so if you don't, even if you have a message, if no one knows what it is when they're walking by, it doesn't matter if you have a message or not. So make sure to make it perfectly clear to everyone. Again, this is super important when you're dealing with the media. For one, if you repeat your message enough times, it's more likely it's actually going to get into a quote in the article, in case, or if you just say it once, it may not actually make it in. But the other thing with the media is they try to sidetrack you a lot and get you talking about issues that really have nothing to do with your event in question, like just random issues about atheism that they're trying to derail you or get you caught in saying something bad. If you just keep repeating your message and stay on topic, that is the best way to make sure you don't accidentally start offending people and letting people put words into your mouth. And for this example, I have a debaptism going on because there's actually an article on Fox News where they basically framed it as these atheists are just making fun of religion by mocking their ceremony, where if you read the quotes from a press release, it was actually like, well, we think that you shouldn't baptize children because they have no choice in the matter, so now these adults are changing their choice that was forced upon them, and we don't think the ceremony has any actual effects on people, and we're talking about it. So because the media didn't get that message across, it was basically lost on everyone. So make sure, well, Fox News, we don't know how good, no matter how hard you try, it may not work out well, but it's really important to just keep repeating that message. Another great technique is to engage your audience and to not just tell them your message, but to let them understand it hands-on. So this is what our group did for Blasphemy Day at Purdue. We just put up blank signs everywhere and let people write whatever they wanted. And a lot of it was pretty blasphemous, but some of it was also religious, and some of it was just like penis drawings because it's a campus. You know, what are you going to do? But people really enjoyed it across, no matter what your religious beliefs were on campus, people really loved the message of free speech. And it wasn't just a sign that says, like, free speech is important. We actually let them actively have free speech. But another thing is, when you're planning events, is to beware risky shifts. Are there any psychology students in the room? Any? Yeah, cool. So a risky shift is basically when you're in a group situation, you're more likely to come up with more extreme viewpoints than you would if you're just alone and coming up with ideas or viewpoints. For example, this would be an example of a risky shift. Let's say your club wants to expose the effects of the Catholic Church's stance on birth control and talk about that for an event. And one of the members says, we should pass out informative flyers. It's like, okay, that's a good first idea. Or we should add condoms to those flyers. Or we could do it outside of the local Catholic Church with graphic images of Africans suffering from AIDS while having a safe-sex orgy and burning an effigy of the Pope. So this is an example of a risky shift. Starts off pretty moderate and goes really crazy. And these are things that when you're in a group, this is really amplified. People just start throwing out ideas, and it can get really, really wild, really too edgy. So when these things are happening, you have to recognize it as a leader and be like, hey guys, let's dial it back a bit and go maybe to like the condom step. That seemed pretty good there. So. Another way to really get your message across is to use humor. I'm a big proponent of lighthearted mockery. I think it's a very effective tool. I sort of consider it the Daily Show approach, in that when you're sort of joking and poking fun, it's a lot harder for people to really hate you. Here's an example where we do apostafarian preaching every year, and last year it happened to coincide when Brother Jed came to campus, who I don't know how many, yeah, from the laughter, apparently he goes everywhere. And he's just an evangelical preacher who says nasty, nasty things. And it happened to be the same day, so we just sort of went around him and we had our silly signs. And people loved it, no matter what their religious background was, because we weren't just screaming at him or trying to debate him on his religious beliefs. We were just sort of like giggling about it, running around as pirates, and people thought it was great that we're sort of mocking the street preacher attitude. And of course, my more personal anecdote is from Boobquake. Humor can really diffuse tension. I pretty much made fun of a Muslim cleric, and I was really kind of worried for a little bit there when I basically said, let's test this guy's views on that immodestly dressed women can cause earthquakes. But because it was funny, and because it was not just me making an angry rant on a blog post about how this guy's an idiot, and because we had silly signs, people loved it. And this is including Muslims. I got so many emails from Muslims or people in Iran who thought this was a great idea, that we were caring about what they were doing and not just being angry about it, that it really worked. But you also have to consider your audience. So not every hilarious in-joke needs to become a public campaign. Just like the risky shifts, sometimes your groups will say things that you might personally think are really funny, like Jesus has two daddies or campus jihad for Allah. But I actually heard of a group that went around posting flyers for campus jihad for Allah and like putting them next to campus crusade for Christ flyers, and even a lot of atheists on campus were very upset about that, and they thought it was inappropriate. So you have to remember that something that may be funny when it's just like you guys in a pub or you guys at a closed meeting doesn't necessarily mean it's a great thing to post for the general public. And you do have to remember that even though it's just your group, your reputation does affect everyone else in the movement too. And I've met at least 3 different people who have talked about their campus groups, and I won't name what campuses they're from, but these people are atheists who weren't involved with the group, and they've told me some of the events or things that have gone down with them that basically made more atheists not want to join their group. So, and they thought that coming to a new school and not knowing anything about that atheist group, and I basically had to convince them, like, no, not everyone's like that. So this is why this is so important to know the edgy yet friendly thing, because it's not just your group. But one way to do the humor thing well is to poke fun at yourself. This is pretty much foolproof because you're sort of the victim of the humor as well as the person doing it. So it's harder for people to get upset about it. It shows your good nature, it shows you can laugh at yourself, and again, it's the least offensive thing you can do. For example, this is a fundraiser my group did called Send an Atheist to Church. And people thought this was great. Not only was it doing something great for the community, but people thought it was sort of funny. You're like, oh, an atheist to church, that's crazy talk. And really, the funny thing is the people who came up and were really offended were atheists who thought we were a Christian group trying to send atheists to church. But then we explained it. They're like, oh, that is pretty funny now. So again, you have to sort of... So people could donate money to different churches in the area, which we had contacted previously, and the ones that had the most money, we went to that church for one of their services. So yeah, it was fun. What did you do with the money? Oh, and the money all went to a food bank in West Lafayette. Sorry, yeah, it didn't go to us. It was a fundraiser. So we raised over $300, so it was cool, yeah. And again, advertising counts. It's not just the event. 2 similar flyers. Isn't God a dick? Good thing he doesn't exist. Is a little different from God. We don't think so either. We use the one on the right, FYI. The thing is, yeah, free cookies, that's important too. The thing with this is your event could be awesome. It could be the most friendly thing. Everyone in your club could be great people. But if you don't advertise in a way that's friendly and no one shows up to your event, again, doesn't matter what your actual message is if no one shows. So make sure that your advertisements can be edgy, but still invite people to come. And remember to take the high road. Sometimes this could be hard, but if another group is doing something really wrong or they're acting like dicks, that doesn't give you the right to be one too. And a personal example of this is an event I went to at Purdue. It was co-sponsored by a Christian sorority and actually the Purdue student government. And it was called Porn and Popcorn. It was an anti-porn event, but it was evangelical in nature. I did not know that when I was going. I'm like, porn and popcorn, that sounds great. It's not good. And some of the quotes from the event were things like, to connect with an unbeliever is to connect with the devil, and if he can't be faithful to God, he can't be faithful to you. A lot of atheist bashing in the event, not to mention everything else that was wrong with it. And you know what? We could have responded in an equally obnoxious way and spread falsehoods and been really angry about it. And instead, we wrote letters to the editor and we wrote letters to the Purdue student government saying we don't appreciate them funding stuff like this that's slandering students at the university. And we took a very moderate approach to it. And it got stuff done. So you don't always have to respond equally. And not everything has to be edgy. Your clubs shouldn't just be about getting attention. Our atheist clubs serve a great social function in that we are in the minority, and it's great to just find like-minded people, especially on certain campuses. And so you can just have dinners and that sort of stuff. It shouldn't all just be about getting media attention. But at the same time, the media considers atheists volunteering and doing good things as edgy. So it's really a win-win situation for you, that even if you're volunteering or cuddling puppies at a shelter, that's edgy that an atheist is doing it. So you can use that to your advantage. So not everything sort of has to be on the extreme angry side or trying to upset religious people. So just keep that in mind. And that's all I have. And I have my blog up there because I love hearing stories from different campus groups on what they're doing, not only so I can steal them from my own group, but so I can advertise them. So if you ever do anything really edgy, I would love to hear from you, and I'd be happy to. You can abuse me as the media as well. And that's my email. So thank you.